the sale of the Commanders because it was the double whammy. It was the announcement that we expected that the transaction had been approved from Daniel Snyder to Josh Harris. And then it was Mary Jo White from the top rope with the sharpened elbow and the foreign object onto Daniel Snyder, the 22-page report, plenty of stuff in there, damning conclusions drawn by Mary Jo White, even though in many respects she was investigating with one arm tied behind her back because the Commanders didn't cooperate. They vowed to fully cooperate. They always vow to fully cooperate. When I say they, I mean anyone who's being investigated. Oh, we'll fully cooperate until the lawyers get involved, and then they don't cooperate. And even without full cooperation from the Commanders, she was able to corroborate, number one, the claim from Tiffany Johnston regarding sexual harassment by Daniel Snyder. That was something that came up during the congressional investigation post the release of the John Gruden emails. And then I think the big one, and I remember when this allegation first surfaced in 2022, I was told if this is proven, he's done. And it is the allegation that money was diverted from the pool that gets shared with all teams, the visiting team share. See, the visiting team at a given game doesn't get a piece of the gate. That piece of the gate goes to the league, and it goes to all teams equally. So the home team gets roughly 60, 65%, and the league gets the rest. And the home team gets it back through its piece of the visiting team share. So when you're doing what the Commanders were doing, and we don't have to say allegedly because Mary Jo White concluded that it happened, when you are reconfiguring the revenue, taking, for example, and this is what Jason Friedman alleged that got this specific ball rolling, taking revenue from the NFL games and accounting it as revenue from other events, college games, concerts, etc., where there isn't a sharing obligation, that's a way to keep money away from your partners. He was stealing from his partners. He was committing fraud on his partners. Now, words that blunt weren't used, but the message is inescapable about what Mary Jo White found. So let's focus on the good news first, and then we'll come back to Snyder. First, Josh Harris taking over, new day for the Commanders. Magic Johnson, very visible already, despite owning only 4% of the team. I was a little surprised. I saw a clip of his interview with Craig Melvin from the Today Show. They played it last night on NBC Nightly News. And the way that they set up the piece, it almost created the impression that Magic Johnson's on equal footing with Josh Harris. And we know that's not the case. Harris is the owner. Magic Johnson is a limited partner. Do we ever even know who the limited partners are? How often do the limited partners ever even speak? Now, maybe this is something that was planned, part of the palate cleanser from Dan Snyder. Maybe it's why Josh Harris got Magic Johnson involved. Let's find someone with, number one, enough money to buy 4% of the equity, about $240 million based upon the total valuation of the team. And two, someone that everyone loves. Who doesn't love Magic Johnson? I love Magic Johnson. You love Magic Johnson. Everybody loves Magic Johnson. So he's become, right out of the gates, the public face and voice of the Commanders, even though he owns 4% of the team, even though we never hear from the limited partners. It's almost like what we envisioned, and we don't know how this is going to play out, but for now, it meshes with what we thought would happen if Peyton Manning got involved with an ownership group, that he would be a limited partner, that he wouldn't be the person holding the 30% or more, but he'd be the face, he'd be the voice. He'd be the one out there. And it makes sense for Peyton Manning. Not a basketball player, but again, everybody loves Magic Johnson, and the Commanders need those positive vibes. Not that they necessarily need it. You could put anybody out there, and it would be better than Dan Snyder. Anyone not named Dan Snyder would be a breath of fresh air for the Commanders fans. But I just think it's something to watch because, number one, what did Harris envision? Number two, is Magic Johnson going to be more present, more involved, more directly in the spotlight than someone who only owns 4% of the team would otherwise be? And one of the things Magic Johnson said as it relates to a possible name change, he didn't say, no, Commanders is the name of the team. He said all options are on the table, but we have other things to deal with for now. Now, look, even if you're going to change the name, You're not going to say that right now. What they're going to do is, I would assume, pick another name, get everything happening behind the scenes, and then when it's ready to be unveiled, when everything is in place, the uniforms, the signage, everything, like they did the last time, they didn't tell us the name until it was time to tell us the name, until they had the jerseys and the logos and everything else. So it's a 18 months to 2-year process. We've already been through it with the Washington football team when they became the Commanders. So I think that Magic Johnson saying all options are on the table means the name is changing. And why wouldn't it change? It's only been around for one season. It was something that always felt rushed and incomplete, and it's tied to Dan Snyder. Change everything you can that was tied to Snyder. And look, you don't change the color scheme because that is the thing that ties the eras together. But you come up with a new name, take your time, do it right, focus groups, market research, and it'll probably trickle out that they are looking at several possibilities. Empower the fans, get them involved. Have a list of finalists that you take input directly from the fans on. There's a way to do it to give the fans ownership of the name. I think that's one of the problems with Commanders. There was never a sense of fan ownership. So I'm contradicting myself, I know. It won't be a secret. It shouldn't be a secret. It should be an open process where the fans have a voice and you know what the reaction is going to be. It's not, well, hey, here comes the new name. We'll see what people think. You already know what they think. You already know what they like and what they don't like before you finalize the team name. But I'll agree they've got other issues that they need to deal with, but it's also a time-consuming process where you don't just snap your fingers. And why not just ride out this year or next year in this honeymoon period where you could call a team anything and the fans are going to be happy? There's a lot of stuff that you don't have to worry about now because the natural afterglow of getting rid of Daniel Snyder is going to take care of a lot of things that people would otherwise be concerned about. So it's a new era, it's a new age, it's a new day for the Washington Commanders, and that's good. I still have some reservations about cash flow and whether or not the Josh Harris group truly has the financial wherewithal to be as competitive as they need to be. Salary cap, even though it's supposedly even, there are ways with signing bonuses paid out immediately. I was talking about this yesterday. There are ways to be more competitive than your peers. Coaches, no cap. Front office, no cap. Facilities, no cap. How much money is the Josh Harris group going to be able to devote to making world-class practice facility, world-class front office, world-class coaching staff? Time will tell. Now, back to the Mary Jo White investigation. And to summarize, there were two important findings in the 22-page report that came out immediately after they announced that the sale had been approved. Number one, the finding that Tiffany Johnston's claim of sexual harassment was sustained by Mary Jo White. And what Tiffany Johnston claimed, she testified before Congress, number one, that Daniel Snyder touched her leg without her consent during a work dinner. And number two, he tried to pull her into his car after that dinner ended. And he vehemently denied it every step of the way. Didn't do it. Well, Mary Jo White found that he did do it. Her assessment of the evidence, he did it. That's important. But as it relates to how other owners would view Daniel Snyder, it pales in comparison to the idea that he picked their pockets, that he presided over a front office, over an organization that systematically reduced the amount of shared revenue to increase Dan Snyder's bottom line. Less money that you share is more money that you keep. So they used creative accounting to move this money around. And what Mary Jo White concluded was it's $11 million that wasn't shared and possibly up to another $44 million that wasn't shared by Daniel Snyder and the Commanders with the partners. And I remember when that allegation was first made by former Commanders employee Jason Friedman, who earlier this week sued the team for defamation, because when he said what he said, when he gave Congress the information that he provided, the reaction was anyone who would say that is committing perjury. So they called him a liar. That's enough to get sued for defamation, especially if he's telling the truth. And, oh, by the way, Mary Jo White found Jason Friedman to be telling the truth. So when that allegation first came to light, people that I know in the ownership ranks, their attitude was, hey, if this happened, he's done. He's done. And we don't know all the machinations behind the scenes. It came out of the blue in early November that Daniel Snyder was considering offers to sell the team. It's entirely possible, and let me be clear here that I'm speculating, but based on the circumstances, it's entirely possible that someone went to him in September or October and said, you know, Mary Jo White has found that Jason Friedman's allegation of shared revenue being diverted for your own purposes is accurate. You're out. You're done. It's over. We can do this the easy way. We can do this the hard way. If you're going to force us to kick you out, we've got the goods. Oh, you can sue all you want, Dan. We've got the goods that you were stealing from us. So if you want to do it, we're ready to do it. You got lawyers. We got lawyers. Let's go. You want to get nuts? Let's get nuts. They may have said that to him. Something caused him to do the thing that we didn't expect him to do. Something made him realize there's no good way out of this maze. And then it's quite possible before he decided he was going to sell the team, they told him it's over. And really, from the standpoint of getting the most that he can, and generally speaking, the other owners, but for the potential impact on estate taxes and generational transfers of equity, generally speaking, you want the value of every team to be as much as it can be. You're in a better position to maximize the sale price if you're not selling with a gun to your head, if it's not a forced sale. If it's just, well, I'll look into selling, maybe I will, maybe I won't. You got to give me an offer that I won't refuse, as opposed to everything must go. When it's everything must go, you're going to have a hard time getting a $6.05 billion. I remember at one point they thought he was going to get 7, and there was a report from Forbes that he had multiple offers well north of 7. I think that was all about maximizing what he got. Oh, what a shock. The guy who the league found was playing games with the money would potentially be responsible directly or indirectly for a false report that he had multiple offers north of $7 billion. So, and that report is publicly available. We've got links to it at multiple stories at PFT. It's only 22 pages. And I'm impressed. I need to say this because I thought if Snyder went quietly, the Mary Jo White report would be inconclusive or otherwise favorable. And who knows? Maybe it was better than it would have been. Maybe this is the sanitized version, because there are some allegations where her finding was that the evidence was inconclusive. But I thought if he just went away, they would not come off the top rope with the sharpened elbow and the foreign object onto Daniel Snyder. I thought they'd give him a pass. They didn't. They found he did those two things I mentioned earlier. They fined him $60 million. Now, $6.05 billion minus $60 million is $5.99 billion, so shed no tears for Dan Snyder, but still, it's a problem. It's an embarrassment. It's one final slap in the face to a guy that every Commanders fan would like to slap in the face repeatedly. And that leads to the thing that dawned on me yesterday after we posted our first item on the Mary Jo White report. She's basically saying he committed fraud. And people get prosecuted for fraud all the time. Fraudulent schemes. Situations where, for example, if a contractor takes a down payment to give someone a new roof and just never does the work, they get prosecuted. People get prosecuted for fraud all the time. And even though she never uses the 5-letter F word in her 22-page report, the 4-letter F word was surely uttered by Dan Snyder when he realized the implication. This report is a blueprint for a prosecution of Daniel Snyder and others with the Commanders organization. I did some research last night. Maryland law, where the stadium is located, Virginia law, where the team headquarters are located, and federal law, which has clear prohibitions against mail fraud and wire fraud. And basically, if you commit any fraud by putting it in an envelope and putting a stamp on it, or phone call, fax, text message, email. Do people still fax? I don't know. But anyway, any electronic communication, wire fraud. The only thing that may save him here is the statute of limitations, and I haven't researched whether to what extent that would apply, and does the discovery rule come into play? I don't know. But bottom line, and this is something I've talked with someone prominent in league circles about for a while now. One of these days, there's going to be a prosecutor with jurisdiction, with motivation, and with discretion that gets exercised in a way that results in grand jury, subpoenas, indictments. There's going to be something that someone does connected to the NFL that gets people not necessarily put behind bars, but prosecuted. And then you see where it goes. Suspended sentence, probation, house arrest, whatever. Something's going to happen along those lines, whether it's out of the gambling environment or whether it's some sort of financial crime like the one that Dan Snyder apparently committed against his partners. And my understanding is that in the room where it happened yesterday, where the approval of the sale was accomplished, those folks will shed no tears if Dan Snyder gets prosecuted. And I don't know that he will. All I know is that report is a blueprint for a potential prosecution of Daniel Snyder and others. And you don't even need to flip many people. It's all there. It is gift wrapped. The evidence is there. Where you need to go and what you need to do is there. And again, Mary Jo White got that conclusion, despite the fact that the Commanders didn't cooperate. They were whining about how much it's going to cost to get the documents together, and we can't do this and we can't do that, and they were unilaterally picking and choosing what they were going to give. Once subpoenas start going out, you better comply. You fail to comply with the subpoena, you got a separate jackpot, as a certain high-profile individual in South Florida has learned recently. Failure to comply with subpoena is a big deal. So is this over? Is this not over? I don't know. But I know that people get prosecuted for fraud all the time. The question is, will there be a prosecutor with jurisdiction over Dan Snyder that decides to go after him based upon the finding that, even though she doesn't use these words, he stole money from his partners? That's essentially what she's finding. Then what happens? Well, get your popcorn ready. And again, Daniel Snyder's not gone. He's not forgotten. And this John Gruden litigation is still going to hang around. And remember this, even if the legal issues have been worked out and there's indemnity and whatever, if the end result of the John Gruden litigation is, or if there is a finding along the way that Dan Snyder and the Commanders leaked those emails, he's got a separate problem, because he went under oath to Congress and said he didn't. So separate and apart from anything that could happen with this financial angle, you got the possibility of lying to Congress if it's proven that the Commanders leaked those emails. So bottom line, Snyder is out, but the end of his time with the NFL could just be the beginning of another adventure that we will cover. It's fascinating. This is unprecedented. The idea that he's essentially been kicked out, fined $60 million on the way out, and there are these lingering issues that flow directly from the paperwork that the NFL published as he was leaving, slamming the door on him. Oh, by the way, here's this. And if anybody out there wants to act upon it, that's their business. We've never seen it before, and I don't know, will we ever see it again? This gets back to something I've said before as it relates to owners. The one factor, the one test, there's a one question test to be an NFL owner. Do you have enough money to buy the team? And it's a shame that that's the way it is. And the NFL has learned a difficult lesson here. You don't just automatically approve the highest bidder, because the person who is the highest bidder could create all sorts of problems for you down the road. Then you get into a situation where the person who's trying to get out is saying, whoa, 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 whoa. Don't tell me who I can and can't sell my business to. See, I thought that was happening in the whole Brian Davis thing, that it was eventually going to be a test case under the antitrust laws. Because when you think about it, and owners have challenged NFL policies in the past based on antitrust violations. Al Davis did it. If you're an owner of a team, and I'll give you the example. Let's say that you have a team you own and you want to sell it to someone that the league would regard as undesirable for $8 billion. The person that the league regards as desirable is willing to pay $7 billion. As the owner of the asset, the person who is cashing out and going home, why do you give up $1 billion simply because the NFL regards the highest bidder as a jerk and the next highest bidder is someone they want to do business with. So that's how it happens. And that's why it's potentially going to continue, because there's a chance that somebody who is really, really, really rich ends up being a really, really, really big jerk. I'm using words other than what I'd like to use just because I don't want anyone to have to bleep my language. But you get the point. This could still happen again. As long as the high bidder wins, there's a chance another Daniel Snyder is going to come along. And I don't know what the NFL does to protect itself against that. Because, again, if there's a huge gap between the highest bid submitted by the biggest jerk and the next highest bid submitted by the very nice person that they would like to be partners with, you got yourself a problem. Hi, it's Mike Florio. Thanks for watching PFT on YouTube. Hit subscribe for the latest news and analysis from Pro Football Talk.